Because I have a lot of experience with this test, this is a clear case where I would use the strategy that I call arithmetize. I know my main strategy for math is to plug points into equations. And I kind of get the sense I've got some equations here, right? I can see these x's and y's, but it seems to be going out of its way not to give me points to plug into those things, right? It's talking about speeds and distances and times, but it's doing it without doing the normal thing that we would do, right? A car moves at a certain speed. It takes a certain amount of time, right? These are real values that we would have numbers for in real life. Here, what the SAT is doing is what it loves to do, is take away the realness of these stories. And that makes them harder to solve because now we have to think algebraically and conceptually, and it's just harder for our brain. So my instinct within a second of seeing this is I'm going to make up my own numbers. So I'm going to try to understand these objects and their speeds in ways that are much more intuitive and much more real. So let's take a look. Objects R and S each travel at a constant speed. The speed of object R is half the speed of object S. So I'm going to need that. The object R travels a distance of 4x inches in y seconds. So let's make R make more sense, right? So R is traveling, let's say it's traveling 4 inches in 1 second, right? So I've made up two numbers. I've made both x and y equal to 1. So what that's doing is it's allowing me to think about this thing in a much more usable way, right? What is the speed? It's 4 inches per second, right? So that's R. Now S is going to be traveling at double the speed, right? The speed of object R is half the speed of object S. So S is now going to be 8 inches per second. Okay. Which expression represents the time in seconds it takes object S to travel a distance of 24x inches? But it's not 24x, it's now 24 because we made x 1, so this is 24 inches. So I can just think about this, right? That's how easy this is. If S is traveling at 8 inches per second, it's going to take it 3 seconds to go 24 inches, right? So 8 times 3 is 24. That's literally it. So which one gives me 3 when I plug in 1 for y, right? So that would be this. 3 times 1 is 3. Done. Took minimal effort. I did use my scratch paper. On the real test, I would use my scratch paper as well. There's a couple numbers floating around. I'm worried about losing track of what I'm plugging in and what I'm solving for, but this was certainly so much easier to think about because I had numbers. Now, I will show you another algebraic way to do it. I think this is how the College Board would explain it as well. But oh boy, I would never, ever do the algebra way here. It's just, I don't trust myself. So what we're supposed to recognize, I guess, is that R is traveling at a speed of 4x inches. I'll still use the units. Oof, my handwriting is terrible. In y seconds. So what we're supposed to realize is that if that's half the speed of S, then S is 8x inches in y seconds. Now my worry with this is that some of you are going to double both. You're going to do 8x over 2y because you're like, oh, it's going twice as fast. We got to double it. Or maybe because the wording of the statement is a little confusing, right? The speed of object R is half the speed of object S. You might do the opposite, and you might actually divide by 2 and make the speed of S 2x inches, right? Now that could happen even if we had real numbers, but I think that when we're thinking about both numbers and letters, we're more likely to miss something because that's two things on our mind. Whereas if we arithmetize and we get rid of the letters, then we're just thinking about numbers. We're much more likely to kind of put our focus in the right places and read things correctly and not make those kinds of careless mistakes. But that's just me. Now, what is the time it would take to go 24x inches? Well, again, I'm a little worried. So let me see if I can show you what I'm worried about here. Here's my worry. My worry is that some of you are going to do 2y here, right? So you're going to do 8x over 2y. Because as you double it, you're going to double both. Now, maybe you're like, why would I ever do that? Well, just look what happens next. Because if we have to go 24x inches, right, how do we get there? We go 8x over y equals 24x over 3y, right? So it makes sense to me, but like, you get what the problem is here? Is in this step, we only change the top. But in order to understand now the 24x, we have to change the top and the bottom, right? So it's not ridiculous for someone to be confused by this. And what would happen if you were confused, right? If you had made this 2y and kind of fallen into that trap, then when you double it again, right, aren't you going to get 6y? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe this is easier than it seems, but I don't know. I guess I've seen a lot of students, and over the years, they think they have a very intuitive understanding of math. But when it really comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, right, when we actually have to do the work, a lot of times we feel very confident in our algebra skills in the same breath that we're making a mistake. And we feel very confident that we're doing the right thing, but we're doing the wrong thing. And that's the trouble, is when we do algebra, sometimes the right move and the wrong move feel exactly the same. Whereas if we're doing arithmetic, I feel like we have a better sense of whether we're doing the right thing or not. I don't know. That's just my personal feeling. But think about these arithmetized situations. Maybe this one you're like, I don't think I needed it. I wouldn't have fallen for that trap. But I'm always thinking about other hard questions, other situations where your brain for some reason just can't see the algebra. Well, if we've got this other backup tool where we make up numbers, we're not going to be completely lost. We're going to be able to still get the question right. So add more tools to your toolbox, and you will have more tools to solve the crazy stuff that comes up on the PSAT and the SAT.